Okay, we're up to Chaf Amid Beis. We're 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 lines from the bottom. We said yesterday there's a machloikis whether you can bring the Dorim and the Davis on Yontif and Adas, machloikis Tanoyim. So the Gemara wants to present the following shaila. Boilahu. Like the opinion of the Tanoyim that in the Dorim and the Davis ain't craving Yontif. Not only was it the Tanoyim, was the opinion of Ula and Rabbi Barava that you can't bring them on Yontif. Let's say Avu b'shachat Mai. Let's say you did go ahead and shech them. What's the halacha regarding sprinkling of the blood? We know a carbon, in order to facilitate eating the meat or burning the imur in the patagos Hashem, it has to follow the avodah of zrika. After the shchita, the kabbalah, the halacha, you have the zrika. So Rabbi Amar Zorik es Adam, you sprinkle the blood al menas lahate basa b'achila. In other words, if there's basar, then you can sprinkle the dam. And there's no basar, you can't. But the purpose of sprinkling the dam is for eichel nefesh, for permitting the achilas basar. Rabba bar Rav Huna Amar, Zarik Asadam Amanas Lahaktere Murim Le'erev. You can sprinkle the blood on the condition to burn the emurim, the pots to go to Hashem in the evening. The obvious question might be Nayu, and the obvious answer, it can be Nayu is Nitma Basar. If the Basar contracts Tumma, by Shabbat, the Basar is not around. L'Rava Le'Zarak. Le'Rava, you wouldn't go ahead and sprinkle the blood because, again, you're sprinkling the blood of Anas for the meat. However, l'Rabba bar Rav Huna of Zorik, you would, because the emurim are present, and as long as the emurim are present, you can sprinkle the blood for the emurim. Meisivei b'gedes kasha on Rava bar Huna kivsei atzeres, the two shlomim that are bought on Shavuos, accompanying the shtei with the shtei lechem, and the uniqueness of the shlomim. They're the only shlomim that are kachei kedoshim. The shchitasen has to be eaten in the north, and they can only be eaten for a day and a night. Shesh shachtan shaloi l'shman, you shechted them shaloi l'shman, you shechted them l'shem and oila, and we have a rule in Masechta Zvachim, kol hazvachim shesh shachtu shaloi l'shman ksherim aval loy oilu l'balim l'shem, but they don't count for the what, for the owner, and you have to bring another one. But in fact, it is kosher. Oy shesh shachtan bein lefnei zmanam, or you shechted. Then you want chafam at the base at the bottom. Oisha shachtan lifnei zmanan, or you shechted the kivdiat seres before the time, you shechted before yontif, or la'achas zmanan, bein la'achas zmanan, or you shechted after yontif. Hadam yizroik, you could go ahead and do zrika of the dam of the kivdiat seres. Ve'abasha yochel, and the bus is eaten. V'im hoisa Shabbos, and if it's Shabbos, lo yizroik, you can't go ahead and sprinkle the blood. It seems to be a shvus. It seems to be it's the din d'Rabbanan. And you can't cook it on Shabbos, the basa. However, in Mazorik, if you do this rika, then churtza, right? It's acceptance, the almanas lahakte emurim later, on provided that you're going to go ahead and burn the emurim in the evening, and you can burn them in the evening. Not that you're sprinkling the dam for that purpose, but if you do sprinkle the dam, even though you can't cook the meat, you will be able to burn the emurim at a Shabbos time, or it's Shabbos. Now it says im zorak. It says im zorak the eved in lechatchila lo. It says only if you do zrika im zorak, but not that you could do zrika. Now bishleim l'rava nicha like rava, which is very good. Since you can't eat the meat, you won't be able to do the zrika lechatchila if you shechted. Again, you shouldn't have shechted the kivsei atzeres. You shouldn't have done it, but you did do it. Now that you did it, can you do zrika or not? Like Rava lechatchila, at this point, you should be able to do zrika if you could eat the basar. Since it's Shabbos and you can't eat the basar, therefore you can't do zrika. Im zorak, if you do the zrika, then in the evening you burn the emurim. So that would be good according to what? According to Rava. El Rab Rav Huna kasha loyd him, since you can sprinkle the blood on the condition to burn this in the evening. So what's wrong with sprinkling on Shabbos? Once the Eved you shechted, lichatchila, you should be able to do this week on Shabbos. There's no reason not to, but you don't. Eli, you see the reasons like Rava that the zrika has to be for the basar, and since you can't eat the basar on Shabbos, then maybe you can't do the zrika. So it's a raya to Rava and a kasha and Rav Adabar Rav Huna. By same as shiny Shabbos mishus yontif. Shabbos is different. We're more machmir. Yontif in Taka, you could go ahead and sprinkle the blood. But on Shabbos, you can't sprinkle the blood. Okay, boy, I mean, so again, so going over the shaila quickly outside, we had a shaila like this. Nadarav and Adavais, you're not supposed to bring on Yantif. What happens if you do? What happens if you do? What do you do with the blood? Says Rabbi, you sprinkle the blood al manas to eat the meat. Says Rav Adabar, says Rav Barhuna, you sprinkle it al manas to do the emurim. Good. Nafkamina between the two would be if you have meat present or not. If the meat became tummy, the meat became lost. Like Rabbi, you wouldn't do this rika. Like Rav Adabar Barhuna, you would do this rika. The Gemara now asks a kasha, what a l'chayra from a brisa. The brisa seems to say that if you shech the kipsei at seres shaloi lishman, and now you want to do this on Shabbos, and you want to go ahead and do this rika. Says Rabbi Imzarak, if you do this rika, then you can burn the mur in the evening. Dafka, if you did it, but you're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do this rika. Why? Why can't you do this rika? Because you see it's Shabbos and you can't eat the meat. So obviously this rika is to matter the meat, and therefore this is no meat to be eaten because it's what? It's Shabbos. Therefore it's a raya to Rav and a kasha on Rav Adabar Barhuna, or we can go another direction and say you can't do this rika lechatchila because of the shvus of Shabbos being more chomed than the shvus of Yontif, where Rav Huna would allow you to do this rika on Yontif. Now, boy mine Rav Avya Saba mi Rav Huna. Behema, you have a behema, chetzi shel Nachri, v'chetzi shel Yisrael. The behema, half belongs to the Nachri and half belongs to the Yisrael. So now, on Yontif, can you go ahead and do the shechita? Because again, you need shechting on Yontif for a guy. Ma'ul shechita b'Yontif. What's the lacha shechita b'Yontif? Again, if it totally belongs to a Jew, Eichel Nefesh, you can't do it the day before because it's not going to be fresh. You're permitted to go ahead and shecht on Yontif, salt it, eat it, everything geschmack, right? Mashen came what? If it belongs to a guy, certainly you can't go, there's no head to the shecht on Yontif. So now we have a problem. We have half and half. What's the din? So Amalei Mutta, it's Mutta. So he said, Rav Huna answered, it's Mutta. Amalei, so Rav Avya, Saba said to Rav Huna, V'chima bein zel in a darm and a davos. What's the difference between this and the darm and the davos that you can't shecht? In other words, apparently, guys, we can view the following. You know that the kohen gets the chaz of a shaykh. You know you get the rest of the animal. So you know part goes to Hashem. So let's view a korban as half Jew, half God. Half Jew, half God, quarter Jew, quarter God, quarter kohen, half kohen, whatever. You can go ahead and divide up the korban similar to just what you did by the guy. You have a part that goes to the guy, a part that goes to the Jew. Says if only you could shech. Good. If that's the case, in the darm and the davis also, you should be able to shech. Since you have a piece of the action, you don't have a piece of the other action. So like you Rav Huna, why can't you shech the darm and the davis on Yontif, which is the theme of the sugya, which is the theme of the sugya. So he answers, Amalei. So listen what Rav Huna told Rav Avya. Urva Parach, look, there's a flying raven. They probably watched the game from last night, right? Urva, there was the Ravens, right? They saw the Ravens beat the Chiefs finally. So they watched Urva Parach, the raven flew. So obviously he was giving him the fooch, right? He was Rav Huna did not answer Rav Ava. Kinafik, when Rav Ava left, I guess he was not so happy with this answer. So Amalei Rabba Berei said, Rabba, the son of Rav Huna to Rav Huna, Lav Hainu Rav Avya Saba the Mishtabeach Leimar V'Gavei the Gava Rabba, who is not this the famous Rav Avya Saba that you praise that is a great person? So why don't you give him an answer? Why don't you answer him? So Amalei, so Rav Huna told his son Rabba, Uma Avidle, what can I do for him? Ani Ayayim Samchuni Ba'ashishois Raftuni Betapuchem. I'm famished today. Rashi brings that it was Yontif and he just gave a drasha. He was very tired and he needed to eat. So in other words, he needed to get a little replenishment of his mental capacity by eating something. So therefore, I was no state of mind to answer the distinction between half Jew, half guy, and korban. And Rav Avi asked me something that you need reasoning. You have to go ahead and come up with a svara. The time of my taka, what's the difference, guys, between the behemoth that's half a Jew and half a guy, and the behemoth that's half a Jew and half God, the Nadav and Nadavais? Behemoth chetz shel Nachri chetz shel Yisrael mutal l'shchita b'yantif the yevshel l'kazayis basa b'l'shchita. In other words, it's true. I'm shechting this animal half for the guy, but it doesn't make a difference because my half, the only way to go ahead and get access to that half is through shchita. I have to do shchita. The guy is gaining. I don't care because I need to do the shchita or else I can't get meat. I say the same svara, you need shchita? No. The kahanim ki kazachu, the kahanim, when they're getting their half, mishulchan gavoya kazachu. Guys, it's not pshat you do the shchita and automatically the kohen gets his part, you get that part, and Hashem gets his part. It all goes to Hashem. And then Hashem divvies it out, mishulchan gavoya, from the mizbeach. The kohen gets his part, and Rashi speaks it out, and we get our part. So therefore, you're not shechting it for yourself at all. You're shechting it total for the Rabbi Shalom. Let's see Rashi. It's beautiful Rashi, guys. The time of my sugi the Gemara. It's the sugi of the Gemara. In other words, this is not Rav Huna giving the teretz. It's the Gemara giving the teretz that Rav Huna would have given had he been of a right frame of mind. Because of his shoik. Every shlamim the kahanim get the chest and the back foot, the back right foot. For who are din lebailim? That's the key. Not only did the kahanim get from the shulchan gavaya, but so too what? The kahanim, the baal b'shar basa, ke'even anoitel pras mives rabbi, like an ever that takes his gift from what? From his Rebbe's house. Nimtzis kol hashchita l'shem gavaya. The whole shchita was l'shem gavaya. Oh, the whole shchita l'shem gavaya, not for me. Can't do it. That's why Nedarim and Nedavos can be born in Yontif. That's the chiluk between the shchita of half goy and half yours, where you're shechting for yourself, and the darv and the davis, where you're shechting totally for Hashem. And anything you get is from Hashem, but it's not for yours in the first place. Amrav Chista, behema chetzi shel nachri v'chetzi shel Yisrael, mutar lishchay biyantiv, just like Rav Huna, like we just said. The yef shel kazayis basa b'le shchita. It's not shaykh to get access to a kazayis basa without shchita. Isa, bread, dough, chetzi shel nachri v'chetzi shel Yisrael, asa la'afaysim b'yantiv. It's asa to bake the whole thing on yantiv. The ha'ef shaleilim falga b'lisha. Yeah, it's half yours, half the guy. Cut it in half, give it to the guy, and now it'll be totally yours. So to bake the whole thing, you will be baking the guy's chelek, and that you can't do. That's the distinction between what? Chala and a behema. To get access to my behema, I have no option, ella to shecht it. Over here, I can get access to bake it, even without the guy, I could separate it before. Maser Rav Chana bar Chiloi, Isas Klovim. Okay, guys, what's Isas Klovim? The shepherd would feed his dog if we would have like a really, really whole wheat bread. Meaning, it's so much bran, it's so much garbage in there, he'd feed it to his dog. Ad kedei kach that it doesn't have a sheer, a shem lechem. You won't have to be mafresh challah, you wouldn't make a moitzi on it, you couldn't eat it. That's if it has a lot of bran. Sometimes if it has a little less bran, b'shas adchak, a person will eat whole wheat. B'shas adchak, a person would eat whole wheat. Right? No normal person in the right mind would eat whole wheat. Right? But again, so b'shas adchak, a person would eat that. So this is speaking about whole wheat, but people b'zman hazeh are eating what we call isas klovim, dog food. Al shteiten Gemara. Now, says the Gemara, isas klovim, b'zman she'aroyim oichlem imenu, when a roya will eat it, so since the shepherd would eat it, chayeves b'chala, it's chayev in chala, because now it has a shem lechem. Uma arvim ba, you could use it for erev chatzeiros, Baruch Hashem, we know that halacha. Umishtafin ba, you could use it for shitu muvois, right? Shitu muvois you also can use it for. Remember, you have the chatzeiros going into a mavoi to carry from, again, the gezerah of different mishuyos. We don't want to carry from mishus hayachim, mishus harabim, so we made special halachas from the bayis to the chatzim, from the chatzim to the mavoi. Umivarchin aleha, you make a moitzi on it. Umizamin aleha, you can have a zeman on it. Benefes biyontif, be baked on yontif. It can be baked on Yantif. The Adam Yoitza by Yidei Chavasa Pesach, and if it's not, does not become leavened, you can even use it for matzah. That's the same lechem oini. Question: the amai for efshaleilim mefalga belisha. It's possible to go ahead and separate part to the dog. In other words, now you want to go ahead and sushtel, just like you go ahead and you don't bake the whole loaf. because its part belongs to a goy. So too over here, l'chayra over here, you could be mefalga belisha. You can go ahead and separate part for the dog. So why you be able to bake the whole thing? Right? Guys, what's the kasha? Kasha is we're making a distinction between an animal and dough. Animal jugoy, shecht. Animal jugoy, chala jugoy, divide. Dough, Jew dog, bake the whole thing. Why not? Divide part and give it to the dog, right? So that's the kasha. What's the distinction between the dough that part belongs to the dog? Actually, it belongs to the roya. I'm not considering the kasha. It belongs to the roya, l'chayra, because he has to feed his dog. So how can you bake for the dog on yontif? That's the kasha. You should have to separate. In other words, you should have to separate parts for the dog and bake your part. But why can you bake the whole thing? That l'chayra is the kasha.
Can't you cut things like gloom and stuff for your animals? Can't you make feed for your animals?
We're talking about baking. We're talking about doing an avodah for your animals. I mean, it's not eichel nefesh. You can feed your animal, but you can't go ahead. In the pasuk of eichel nefesh, it says baruch. It says kol malach lo yeyasa behem achasher yochel lochel nefesh hu levada yos lachem and we dashen lachem leil klavim. You're not able to go ahead and prepare food that would involve an avodah, right? Let's say the animal dropped dead and you don't hold a muktzah, right? It's not noilad. You'd be able to give it to the dog, right? There's no preparatory step over there. Is that what you're thinking about? The klavim, the nevela?
Yeah, I'm thinking also just to cutting it up, and they say you can cut it up and.
That's not a problem. That's not an avodah. There's no issa. Here we're talking about baking. Here we're talking about doing eichel nefesh. This is eichel nefesh. Okay. So now. So what's the difference? L'chayra, if you're telling me you could divide for a guy, you should divide for the dog. So in other words, since you can throw the dog literally a bone, you can throw him the vela, so therefore the whole thing belongs to you. In other words, you're not baking for the dog, you're baking for yourself. Because I don't have to give the bread to the dog. I have other foods to give him. I can give him the vela. Fred, now this is hoyel, guys. Rav Chisda said this thing, and this is hoyel. Hoyel, I can give him the vela, I can bake the whole bread. Right? This is the classic hoyel, right? Hoyel, that's chazi l'orchim, bein hashmashas, I can go ahead and put more what? I can put in, not bein hashmashas, that the orchim will come, I can cook more food. Good, the hoyel, famous hoyel, right? Right. Hoyel, that I can do it on Shabbos, I can do it on Yom Tov. I mean, that was that we said yesterday. Now, Umi Yislei Rav Chisda hoyel. Does Rav Chisda hold of the svara of oil? For Itmar hoy for beyontif l'choyel. If someone bakes beyontif l'choyel, Rav Chisda Amaleike gets malchus. Rabbi Ameina Leike. Rav Chisda Amaleike. Lo yamin in hoyel umiklei orchim. You don't say since the orchim would come, you could bake for them. Chazilei hashtanami chazilei. And since then it would be chazi for the orchim, it's chazi nami for the person themselves. And Rabbi Ameina Leike. I mean hoyel. So you see, Rav Chisda doesn't hold of hoyel. So if he doesn't hold of hoyel, how could you say he could bake the bed of a dog? Hoyel, he could feed him what? Nevela. He doesn't hold of hoyel. So Ella loitema hoyel. Don't say since he can feed him nevela. The efsha Ella going to islay nevela. The vaday efsha lepaisam nevela. In other words, the only time Rav Chisda would permit you to go ahead and bake the bread of klavim is if you have something else to give to the klavim. But if you wouldn't have something else to give to the klavim, you wouldn't be able to bake the whole thing. You'd have to divide it up beforehand. You don't say since, you say not since, you say vaday I have. When I have something else to give the dog, I can bake the whole challah. Masha'en came by the goy, I don't have that. The goy has a piece of the action, and therefore I have to divide it. So we have different dargas. By shchita, by a regular animal, you could shecht for you and a goy because you can't get to the kizayis basa without it. By a korban, I can't shecht. Why? Because it's not considered. I'm doing it for myself. I'm getting it from the Rabbi Shalom. So the darim and the davos that I could bring any other day, I can't bring on Yontif. It's machlokes tanoim. We saw it yesterday or 2 days ago. So you can, or double yesterday, whatever it was. So getting lost in the. On the Doner of Davis, you can't, because anything you get is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Bread of a animal that belongs to you and a guy. Again, the same thing as you could go ahead and shech. Whereas opposed to challah, you and a guy, you can't, because you can divide it up. But of a kelev, you could, in the situation when you have, if you say hoyel, you could do it even if you don't have any nevela. But if Chisda doesn't hold a hoyel, you would need nevela, something else to give the dog to bake the whole bread. Or else you're baking for a dog, and we said lechem, and it can't be b'loil klavim. Okay, good. Okay, boy, me name Rav Huna. Hani b'nei baga. These people in the boondocks. The Romi Alayu Kimcha de b'nei chela. So now this is the Shaila b'nei chela. This is a Goyish army, and can they go ahead on Yontif? The government expects you to provide for them on Yontif. Can you make food for them? Ma'ala faisa b'Yontif. What's about baking for them on Yontif? So Amalahu, so Rav Huna said, Chazina, Iyav le rifta le yenuka v'le kapti. If you would bake for them and you would take part of it and give to a child, then kol chad v'chad chasi le yenuka. Everything you bake, sin le yenuka, oichel nefesh. You can see for the yenuka, and then we'll view it as you made it for the Jew, for the little kid, and you're giving the guy, but you didn't bake for the guy. V'shari. If, however, they're makbid and you can't give it to a little kid, then nimsa, what did you do, guys? You baked solely for the guy, then usser. So that would be the lumdus over here. That if you're going ahead, if you bake for a kid, right? If you're baking for a child, if they give to the child, right? Now clearly this disagrees with Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda would say you'd have to divide the bread. Guys, we said like Rav Chisda, you can't bake for the guy, right? So look at Rashi. Kol chada v'chada, upolig Rav Huna the Rav Chisda. Rav Huna disagrees with Rav Chisda, who said half a Jew, half a goy, you can't bake challah. The amachetz yishal nachi v'chetz shal nachi asal afaysan. So over here, what is he saying? Since you're baking for the child partially, as long as partially is available for the child. I don't think I said right pshat. It's not pshat you bake totally for the child, even partially for the child. Rav Chisda would have to say you bake totally for the child, but no. Rav Huna says, no, I disagree with Rav Chisda. It's like a car, it's like shchita of a regular animal. As long as I have a piece of the action, the guy can go ahead and take part of it. So even though over here you don't have the svara of EF because I is possible shchita, nonetheless, says Rav Huna, as long as I have shaykhs to this, you can go ahead and give it to the guy. So I have shaykhs to this. You give it, if the guy is not makbid, if I give it to a child, so I bake for the child, memela, the other part goes to the guy. That's Rav Huna. Mashenkin, if the guy is makbid, not to give anything to a child, then in that scenario, then you won't be able to bake because it's not oichel nefesh, you bake totally for the guy. I've Tanya, we went to Brisa. How can you say you could bake? Maisa b'shimon money. There was an incident with Shimon money. Shloi bo amish lebeis medrash. He didn't come yesterday to the base medrash. B'shachris. Matzah Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba came famed of Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba avad of Asari Rugi Malchus fame. Omeloi mifnei maloi bos amish lebeis medrash. Why didn't he come yesterday to the base medrash? See, I'm not the only one who asks where the guys are in share. There's a precedent for that, right? To ask, where were you yesterday? Like, okay, anyway. Amaloi Beleshes Boleirenu said Shimon Taimani, a Beleshes, an invading army, they came to that city. Upik Shalach Beskola, and they wanted to go ahead and plunder the whole city. We go ahead and shecht it for them in Egel, and we fed it to them. Upatronum l'shalom, and we said, Seischem b'shalom. Get it, go. So in other words, you saved your money by shechting only for a guy. So Amaloi Tamani in Layotza Scharim behevsadetchem. Said Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba to Shimon Taimani, I'm wondering if you weren't Yotza Yischar with your hefsid. In other words, Yischar, you went ahead, you gave up your Olam Haba for Olam Hazeh by going ahead and be Machal Yantif. Shariam Torah lachem v'leilav dechachavim. Right? The Torah said you can only again the lashon of the pasuk. Right? For you, nefesh levada yaslachem, but not for them. One second. You shechted it. You feed a little bit to a yid. You give a little bit. Some of Yosef, Egel Treifa Havi. The reason why Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba got upset. It was an egel treifa, and you couldn't feed it to a little kid or a person, a regular person. Right? You can feed it to the dogs. So now this gets into the shiloh of my conversation with Benji. Now you can feed it to the dogs. If you can feed it to the dogs, the chayr, it's not a problem. So why don't Yehuda ben Baba get on Shimon ben Tamani's case? Tanoi, it's machlokes Tanoim whether the heter of eichel nefesh extends to dogs. The Tanya, guys, this is the pasuk of Yontif. This is the Masechta Beitzah pasuk. This you're starting Yontif today. The reason you can sit and eat, and if you hold me toich, the reason you're able to carry, and the reason why it's not so severe that you can do things on Yontif is this pasuk. Mitoich shahutroi litzarchai huta shalei litzarchui. Passing like Beis Hillel. I'm going over the Masechta. Daf Yomi Beitzah. When Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai does not hold the mitoich. The only thing you could use is eichel nefesh. That's it. Nothing else. He doesn't permit anything else. You can't carry or anything. Yet Beis Hillel mitoich. Since you hold the mitoich, you're permitted. So therefore, over here also, lochem, you can go ahead. Now, when it says kol nefesh, mashma afilu a dog. The dog has a nefesh. How do you know a dog has a nefesh? Anyone who hits the nefesh of an animal should pay. It's a pasuk in Emor. I think you have to go ahead and pay. So you see, it's called a nefesh. So when it says oichel nefesh, it means even a dog. So like that man the Amma, you will be able even to go ahead and shech for a dog. So why did Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba get on the case of Shimon HaTeimani? L'chayra, it's a treifa. Good as a treifa. Feed it to the dogs, no problem. Tamalayim, it says lachem v'lei l'klavim. Div Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Akiva Amar, no, I feel nefesh behema mashma. And came out tamalayim lachem v'lei l'klavim. Okay, it's very geschmack, guys. So now, Shimon HaTeimani, he had a man the Amma that he went according to. He could go according to Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva says lochem, and not for a guy, but for a dog, yes. And Shimon HaTeimani and Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba held like Rabbi Yossi Aglili that you can't go ahead and do it for a dog. Tosfos over here goes out on the limb and say, even though we have a klal in Shas, machloikis Rabbi Akiva v'chaberu halachim Rabbi Akiva. Over here, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi Aglili. You can't go ahead and do for a dog. You would not be able to. And guess who has a granddog coming for Yontif? So I have to tell it's Mamash and Yoni Diyayma. DJ, you're gonna have to eat dog food. DJ likes the bones from the steaks. Now, now what's the difference? Why is Rabbi Akiva making a chilik between Oivik Yechavim and dogs? Why for a dog yes, Oivik Yechavim no? Marois the Rabbi says klavim loitz Oivik Yechavim. Marbani is not klavim. I'll go ahead and include klavim. Shema is the same alecha. We have a chiyuv if we have to feed the dog. That we don't have to feed the dog. And that would the distinction be between the two, and that would explain the dialogue between Rabbi Shimon HaTeimani, who permitted it, holding like Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, who was upset, who held like Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Nice Gemara. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, who says you can't go ahead and there's no eichel nefesh by a dog. Now you might remember, if anyone remember, I think Benji and maybe Yehuda Chaim Leis might remember this. Maybe do you remember the picture in the Sechta Erevin about they used to have they had big pits, big holes in the ground, and they would put the date pits in the ground to feed the animals. That's such a musik, right? Right. So now they want to know these soifle, these are these date pits. These are these date pits. Now pashta is a muktzah. You're telling me, guys, you're not able to feed the dogs, right? Sahai sufli l'chiyusa hechi shadin l'biyantif. Guys, bishleim, if you can feed the dogs, then it's not muktzah. But if you're telling me you can't feed the dogs, that oichel nefesh is not permitted, why am I able to carry these date pits? It's dog food. You feed it, use it to feed the dogs. And you're telling me lachem l'klavim l'biyasei glili. So it's muktzah. How could you carry them? How could you carry these date pits? Bishlam Rabbi Akiva oichel nefesh, no problem. You carry the date pits. You can carry the nevela. You can do anything. But Rabbi Yossi Glili, it seemed to be this is halacha l'maisa. He wanted to know these date pits. That's why I illustrated you from that case where they would go ahead, they'd pile it up in these pits, the pits in the pits, right? They would pile it up in these holes in the ground, the bar. So you see that there must be something that was common at the time. How could they carry them like Rabbi Yosef Glili? It says l'achlav le'leklavim. Amalei. So Rabbi Yosef said to Abaya, "Chayil v'chazi l'hasaka." Since you could burn date pits, they're not muktzah. Not because of it has nothing to do with goyim, with dogs. You have uses from it. You could use it as a fuel. Since you could use it as a fuel and you're able to cook on yontif, therefore it's not muktzah. Says Martenech b'yaveshta. That's if they're dry, they can be used for fuel. When they're moist, what are you going to say? When they're moist, you can't go ahead and use them as a fuel. So they should be muktzah like Rabbi Yosef Glili. Amalei, so Rabbi Yosef told Abaya, chazil has to gadol. And we all know that no matter how moist something is, if you have a fire going, to go ahead and keep the fire going, your big fire, you're able to throw that in. A hesed gadol, you will be able to use them. Since they could be used for an hesed gadol, they're not muktzah. Because again, they have a tzarche for a human being. Tenach b'yontif b'Shabbos ma'ikol meima. Why on Shabbos are you able to carry it? Where you have no hasaka, there's no burning. So l'chayra, since it's muktzah. Now we just shifted. Forget oichel nefesh. Now we're just asking the shaila. Date pits, they're muktzah. How are you able to carry them? It says agav rifta. If that's how you eat them and they fall on top of the bread, you can go ahead and carry them on top of the bread. Kiddush Shmuel, Dama Shmuel. Oisa Adam called Tzarchei b'pas. Okay, you can do all Tzarchei b'pas. So someone's going to ask me, what about a buses? Doesn't the pas become a buses to the pits? Guys, you know what? If you have a buses to the muktzah on top of the buses, you can't carry it. So look at Taisos. Look at, count up from the bottom of the page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines up. Rabbeinu Tam Perish. The loy mikri buses the dava muet she'ena nikfa kigain shivrei eitzim b'shirei kaisais. This stuff is so small. It doesn't seem to be something that's negligible. It's carryable. So therefore, it's not common. It's not a buses. That's speaking about a different sugi. I'm applying it to over here as well. Okay. Now, Rav Huna, he went ahead and he said that you can give, since if you shechte for a goy, if the goy will admit that you give it to a kid, comes out you shechte for the kid, right? So he permitted for the army to shecht for the army, right? That was Rav Huna's din. Rav Huna permitted shechting for the army because you'd be able to go ahead. I'm sorry, it doesn't mean no. Not shechting. Making bread. You have a chayil comes to the city. It's a goyish chayil. The king has a law that the Jews have to provide a bread. So could you go ahead and bake on Yontif? We said, see if the soldiers are not makbid. If you can throw the kids some of the bread, then it's okay. That was Rav Huna's din. Rabbi Shimon Levi is going to argue on that. He's going to say you can't do it. So in other words, now we digress to discuss pits and the shita of Yosef Glili, and then we're getting back to the sugya from before, the sugya of afiyah when you're baking something for a Jew and a guy. Now, upligi the Rabbi Shua ben Levi and Rav Huna, who permitted baking for the guy if they throw the kid, if you would be makbid, if you give the kid some bread, would argue. Rabbi Shua ben Levi argues. Rabbi Shua ben Levi, mazmin es hanachrim b'Shabbos. You can invite a guy for a Shabbos meal, bein mazmin es hanachrim b'Yontif, but you can't do it on Yontif. Maybe why you're going to cook more for him. So you see, you can't cook what on Yontif for what, even though you're cooking for yourself, you can't cook what for a guy, and that would be you can't bake for the guy because you may give it to the little kid. You see, obviously that's not a heter according to Rabbi Shua ben Levi. You can't invite him mishum shiori kaisis. Now, they used to go ahead and they would dip their bread in wine. They would dip their bread in wine. You'd end up at the bottom of the kais some mere stick of bread. You know, like if those people have like the dip cake and coffee at the bottom of the coffee pot, you always find some cake. You'd find some wine absorbed in bread, and the chayre that's the mere stick of zach, and therefore you're not able to invite the guy because of muktzah. Also, our stuff should also be muktzah. So how could we go ahead, dip it in wine? If it's a muktzah problem, it has nothing to do with the goy, it has to do with us. Says the chazil targonim. We can feed it to the chickens, so it's not muktzah. We have a purpose behind it. Says did who nami chazil targonim? The goy is also let's feed to the chickens. Says once the guy touches the wine, guys, it's what it's asa bahana, and therefore it's muktzah. Mashenkin ours, which is pretty for we can feed to the chickens. Fred the Gemara tatinu agav kasa. Why should it be us to invite the guy carry that agav the kois? Miloi Omar Rava metalton kinuna agav katmei. You can carry like the article tied to the brazier. I think the best thing about it is chimney that you put the coals in. So now they have coals and they have chips of wood at the top, and the wood is tameh, wood is muktzah. So you're still able to carry that agav, even though you're carrying afgav dikol shivei eitzim. So too over here, carry the kois, even though you have this muktzah dika wine bread inside. It says over there it's not isuri enough. Again, so this is where Tosfos asks the kasha about buses. Why did we not say the kois is a buses? And it's answering because of why it's a davamut. It's a very little amount, so it can't be buses to the very little amount. It says the Gemara, the difference between shivrei eitzim and the wine bread of a guy is the wine bread is asa bahana, and that's why you can't. Therefore, they will machna. But hachi suri. So over there, hasam lavi suri anoninu hachi suri ninano. So by the chimney with the coals with the wood, since the wood is not asa bahana, it's just muktzah. You can carry it agav the kanuna. Mashenkin over here, the kois, which has isuri anot, they were more machmir that you can't even carry that, and therefore don't invite a guy for Shabbos. He's going to go ahead and put the bread in the cup. It's going to create the isra muktzah and isra anot. Okay, there's a very famous halacha which comes in use a lot. If something's in your house, you're able to get rid of it. If you have a soya in the house, if you have garbage in your house, if you have a dead rodent in your house. I'm Sled of Shiloh. I still remember Yom Kippur a few years ago. We were davening in a certain place, and somebody asked me, "There's a dead mouse. Can I get rid of it?" I said, "Before Shalachi, go ahead, take the dead mouse. It's Yom Kippur. It's graf shel re'eh. It stinks. You can get rid of it. That's the reason you're able to take the garbage out of your house on Yontif, guys, or Shabbos. It's graf shel re'eh. You're able to move it. So l'chayr, why can't we remove this cup with this grat? This moyastik of bread infused with wine. You should be able to go ahead and get rid of it. Right? Amalei. So Ravina said to Rav Achamid Ifti, in other words, I'm going to invite the guy knowing that he's going to go ahead and put this in the cup. In other words, you're right. I'll scrap shalei once it's there, I could. But to invite him lechatchila to make a graf shalei, that you don't do. Admei Rabba Lamar Shmuel V'Darish. Rabba was speaking to Shmuel V'Darish. It seems he wasn't spoiled from this thing with the bread wine problem. But you could invite him, but not in Yantif, because he seems we hold not like Rav Huna. He holds not like Rav Huna. He holds like Rav Shua ben Levi that you're not excuse me. You might be increased and cooked for him too much, so that would be a problem. Okay. They say to him, if you're happy with whatever we do, we're not going to do more than you. In other words, make it clear to the guy, or if you don't, even just think that you're not going to go ahead and do more. And then, if you have no choice, to invite him, you shouldn't. But once you have no choice, they show up, then make clear to the guy, or in yourself, that they bring down halacha, that you should think that I'm not going to make more for the guy, only for myself. Okay, next Mishnah Beishamai Yoimrim, Layichim Adam Chamin Laraglov, a person can't heat up hot water for his legs, Elamkein Ruya Lishtia, unless you can drink from it. Now, guys, this is great. Beishamai does not hold the mitoich. If he doesn't hold the mitoich, going ahead and taking your food, you're taking water for your feet, of course you can't do it, right? He doesn't hold the mitoich. He doesn't mitoich shehuta litzayrich, huta sheloy litzayrich. He doesn't let you carry. He doesn't let you do anything except mamish for the food. So of course this would seem to be an extension of the mitoich that you won't be able to do it. Good. However, he says if it's roy to drink, then you could. Why? He doesn't hold of mitoich. He does mitoich that it's right to drink. You could use it for your legs. He doesn't hold the mitoich. It's such a good kasha. Taisus Yeskin. Let's see the bottom Taisus. It's such a good kasha. Taisus Yeskin kasha. La yichem adam chamem elkein ruin the shtia. Vim taimar me'eza tam shari beishamai. Why would beishamai permit it? Vafilu roy l'shtia. Even if it's right to be drinking, why would he permit it? Hales lu mitoich. He doesn't hold mitoich shehutru. Let's sayrich hutru let's sayrich. V'yeshleima de mayri kegoin sheshoisa. He did drink it. Umarbe, and he put more in lirchatz raglov. V'hachi isa behedya b'yushami de leishami tzarich lishtais mehem. You mamish have to go ahead. What? And you mamish have to go ahead and drink from it like Beishamai. Now, notice, guys, it said you can only heat it for your legs. Beis Hillel matirim. What about the rest of your body? It says almost your legs, right? Let's continue, Taisvis. But Beis Hillel matirim. V'dafka l'raglov. Dafka for your feet. Aval chol gufay moida de asa. To wash, to put enough water in to wash your whole body. Beis Hillel will be mutter, that would be aser. The dava hashav chol nefesh being in. When it comes to eichel nefesh, guys, it has to be dava that's shav b'chol nefesh, meaning every person does it. V'zeh einay roi ella lebnei adam u'nogim. Who has to wash on Yontif? Only a person who's in big istanis, a person who's a pleasure seeker. Aval yadav raglav shav b'chol nefesh. But to wash your hands and feet, everyone does that. So therefore, Beis Hillel matters your hands and your feet, but it won't matter your whole body. It's a very good, guys, a very important Taisus to know. If you use your Gemara, you should go check off this Taisus.
They say that's today, though, it's not, we're not in this because we shower our whole bodies every day. So it's not.
Again, there's a shaila about taking a shower. There's heterim people say for taking a cold shower on Yontif. There are heterim for this. This is the Taisus for that. There is Torah. Whether you can take a cold shower Yontif, especially a 3-day Yontif. I know somebody, a very good friend of mine, who the 3rd day Yontif requires a shower. V'amevin Yavin, who that good friend is. Now, you can play multiple choice in boxes, guys. Anyway, so Geshmaka Taisus to know, right? Geshmaka Taisus to know. Okay. Let's now the last part of the Mishnah, the last statement of the Mishnah. Madura u'mischamim kinegda. A person can make on Yontif can make a bonfire, a large fire, and warm himself up kineged. You can fuel up the fireplace to heat up on Yontif your body. Now, doesn't say anything about Beis Shammai Beis Hillel over here, correct? Would Beis Shammai agree with this? In Sfara not, right? So says the Gemara, Iboiluhu, Hay Madura man kitoni la. This last din of Madura. Who learned it? Divrei hakol he. It's the opinion of everybody. V'shanalu Beis Shammai, and Beis Shammai makes a distinction between anos kol gufa anos ever echad, and Beis Shammai would make a distinction between one part of your body, your feet, versus your whole body. He would permit the whole body, but not the feet. Aydilma Beis Hillel kitani la, of Beis Shammai loy shani lahu. Or maybe it's only Beis Hillel who said it, and Beis Shammai did not learn it. Tashma. Beis Shammai oimrim la yosa adam madura v'yischamim kinegdo b'sel matirim. Mefurish Beis Shammai would not permit this. He wouldn't permit your legs. He wouldn't permit your whole body. This is a din that's unique according to who? According to Beis Hillel. So I wish everyone a good Yontif. I thank you for listening. And I guess it's so interesting not to learn on Yontif. We really should get together and learn.